In this question, we are going to evaluate the values of a function f of xy equals natural log of y squared minus 2x. And we will also go ahead and take a look at how to find its domain and graph it. So first, we just gotta compute some values, and you need to keep in mind then log of negative numbers and 0 is not defined. So if you see anything like that, then the answer would be D and E. So let's plug it in and be careful with substitution here. X is 0 and y is -2, not the other way around. So we've got -2, and very important when you substitute negative numbers to put them in parentheses. And then we got -2 multiplied by 0. So that's just going to give me log of -2 squared. That's a 4. So that's natural log of 4. So we want to go ahead and put that in here. Then if we want to put f of 63 over 2, 8. So let's see if we can do that. So we're going to square. Again, this is x, this is y. We're going to square the y. And then we are just going to substitute the value of x in there. So this looks like that's log of 64. And then here we're going to have subtract 63, which is just log of 1. Now you should know, and that should be by heart, that natural log of 1 equals 0. So everybody should know that. With or without calculator, you should be able to tell me that. Okay, so this is just going to be 0. All right, for this part, f of 1, 4, so let's compute that. So we are substituting again, x is 1 and y equals 4. So that will just become 4 squared minus 2 times 1. So that's log of 16. And then subtract 2, that will just give me log of 14. So no other simplification is necessary. We're just putting whatever we got. So now f of 2, 2, what happens with that? So we're substituting 2 for x and also 2 for y. We're going to wind up with log of 2 squared minus 2 times 2. Well, that is log of 0. So you should know that that is undefined. A natural log of 0 is undefined. So this will just be D and E. Now, f of 0, and I'm just going to do it in my head, 0, 0 is also going to give me log of 0, which is also undefined. Now, how about f of 0, 4? So let's take a look at that. So here we have, we're substituting 4 for y, and then we're substituting 0 for x. So that's just natural log of 16. I mean, you could write it, maybe simplify it, but I will just leave it like that. Okay, so that's all done. Now we have to get the domain. So how do you get the domain? So the first thing you need to remember that whenever we find in a function that is like natural or log or square root, and we want to find its domain, the first step is to go ahead and take the argument, which is this right here, and make sure that it is greater than 0. In the case of log, this inequality will be strict. So this is strictly greater than 0. If it was square root, then 0 actually will be allowed. And so that would have been more than or equal to. But this log of 0 is undefined. Okay, so now this is done in steps. Step number 1 to find the domain is to actually turn the inequality to equality. So you're going to get y squared subtract 2x and make that equal 0. So that will give me, if I were to solve, so I need to solve it either as y as a function of x or as x as a function of y. So in this case, it is going to be x as a function of y. So if I were to add 2x to both sides, I will wind up with y squared equals 2x. Now, this is a parabola. So I'm supposed to graph this boundary. And this is a parabola, but it's a horizontal, not vertical parabola. So let's see if we can graph it. So all we really need is the vertex. So vertex here is going to be at 0, 0. Vertex of parabola, we can decide what this is if you put x equals y squared over 2. Vertex of parabola is determined by the coefficient of, in this case, y, but it's 0. So that will be a 0. So 0, when x is 0, y is 0. So that's going to be your vertex. And then you basically just need one other point, and then the parabola will be defined. So for example, I can say, okay, well, if x, Well, actually, if y equals 2, so if y equals 2, then what do I get for x? So x equals 2 squared over 2, so that's 2. So looks like the parabola is also going to go through point 2, 2. So this is x equals to y equals 2. And notice that when y equals, it doesn't matter, plus or minus 2, you will get the same x value. So you will also get the parabola over here. So now we can kind of identify what the graph is going to look like. So something like that, and then it just keeps going. So I'm not going to draw any further, something like that. Okay, so we did step 1. We graphed the boundary. Now, we need to decide, is the boundary going to be solid or dashed? Now, because this inequality is strict, so this is greater than strictly, the equality is not there. That means this parabola has to be dashed. So I'm going to turn it into dashed because the actual boundary is not allowed. You cannot be on the parabola because then you get ln of 0, which is undefined. And then the parabola will define the plane into 2 regions. So the regions are going to be like, you can think of it, I guess, to the right of the parabola and to the left of the parabola. How do I decide that? Well, to decide that, you got to pick a test point. So step 2 is pick any test point, but it cannot be on the parabola. So any values of x and y that do not belong to the parabola, because on the boundary it's just going to be 0. So what you want is something else. So I will just pick 1, 0. How about that? So this is x is 1, y is 0. That definitely is not on the parabola. This point is actually right over here. So then I have to go ahead and plug that back into my inequality, because remember I started with the inequality. So inequality is y squared minus 2x greater than 0. So let's substitute. Again, careful what you're substituting for. So this is going to be 0 squared minus 2 times 1. And is that greater than 0? Well, I got negative 2 greater than 0. Well, actually, no, that does not work. This is false because negative 2 is actually less than 0. So what that tells you is that it's not going to be the region to the right of the parabola. It's going to be the region to the left. So it's going to be all of this stuff over here and not including the parabola itself. All right, so let's see if we can graph it over here. So this is a parabola that looks like this. Again, vertex is at 0, 0. Then we also picked another point 2, 2. So we did that, we drew it, but this is just the boundary. That's all there is to it. Okay, so then they're asking us, okay, so this is going to be to the left of a horizontal parabola, x equals y squared over 2, or y squared equal to x, not including the boundary. Y squared equals to x. So I think it's going to be this one right here. Wow, there's a lot of choices here. All right.